moistly, speaking moistly. Keep 2 meters apart, speaking moistly.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Speaking Moistly. Today, I have a special guest with me, my guest host, Kelly. How are you today, Kelly?
I am doing well. Thank you for having me. How are you doing, Mark?
I'm doing great. Wonderful to have you. Thank you for coming on. And
Yeah.
Kelly is from Saskatchewan, and we've met a few times in person, which is cool. But I thought it was important to get different perspectives from across the country because I know people from across the country. We're all doing this internet thing anyway, so I think that these news items, these news articles affect people differently across the country. And I mean, there are certain things, the gun ban is one, that will certainly affect and are affecting people in Saskatchewan differently than in Ontario. And I think that while our first story here, and CBC is reporting, COVID-19 in Ontario is now primarily a Toronto area problem, figures show. More than 76% of the province's new infections are in the GTA, CBC News analysis finds. So I don't know how much we're going to believe that, but let's give them a little bit of credit and say maybe they're right, and we'll talk about it. It's interesting that the majority of the infections are in heavily populated hotspots like the long-term care facilities, et cetera, in Ontario, and that's where all the news is being made. And it's awful, but now we're getting to a point where there's other unintended consequences in Ontario. What do things look like out in Saskatchewan as far as, like, are you guys seeing hotspots like this? Is it more widespread? Is it less widespread? What do people think?
Well, ours have been very much in pockets. So for the most part, we've had really low numbers. We've had a few pockets at first out of the big cities, which is to be expected when you have more international travel, business being done back and forth day to day.
Yep.
Smaller centers have generally been just the odd cluster from maybe a large event. In our area, there was a snowmobile rally that yielded a number of cases. Now there's a few northern communities, particularly with our Aboriginal community. The further north, I'm sure, much like part of other parts of Canada, there's more of a high population of Aboriginals. There's a lot of people on some of the reserves in remote areas that are experiencing, for example, the Losh. They're experiencing a massive outbreak right now. So they have to, we're opening up. We're going through, I think we're in phase 2 now.
Okay.
So a lot of medical stuff is opening up. I think people can do, things like massage and chiropractor and all of that. So things are slowly opening because it's been pretty calm here.
Uh-oh. Microphone.
Am I still there?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, sorry. I literally moved my foot and then pulled the cord down. That's exactly what I didn't want to happen. So
toss your pigtail over your. Yeah, there you go.
There we go. There we go. So things have been pretty calm here. But we have had to, certain areas have to slow down the process while the rest of the province opens up. So the numbers are currently 637 confirmed, 559 recovered, and 10 deaths. And I believe from what I've heard across the province, there's been fairly low hospitalization rates. There's been low ICU rates, not a lot of ventilators needed. So really a lot of the hospitals were experiencing nights where things were really quiet. So it's been way different than these other parts. It's like we're watching a different world in other parts of the world itself. And in Canada, it's a different universe in parts of Ontario and Quebec. So
yeah, well, I mean, like, partially that's kind of how I'm feeling as well. And I mean, like, Guelph, we've got 135 cases as of yesterday, or a couple of days ago anyway, I was talking about it. And we're at a situation where, we've still got playgrounds locked down. We've still got people who aren't able to go to work, retail places that aren't open, restaurants that aren't open. We don't have massage open yet. And I'm not trying to disparage anybody. I don't think it's easy to make the decisions that leadership has to make. But I think that it's notable that at the beginning we were told across the country, both from like the federal level and then from the provincial level, like, we're going to close down for 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks became 2 months all of a sudden. And now it's like, what's the goal? Like, at what point are we going to be safe enough to go back? Because, I don't know. And I'm not saying that, I just think that maybe it should be more clear.
Yeah, this is hard, right? Because as soon as you decide that you're going to talk in sort of the pro side of reopening things, people jump down your throats at some sort of selfish, you only care about the stocks and not the people. Yeah. I don't have stocks. Do I look like I'm rich enough to have bloody stocks? I don't even understand the concept of it. So it's regular people that can't go to work. It's regular people that can't get into the doctor or get a surgery or have even just a diagnosis test. So we don't even know those types of numbers. Like the medical side's what interests me, being someone that's waiting on a specialist appointment myself, and everything just got shut down, as well as my mother is also waiting. And I get it. We're all willing to allow things to back up. We all agreed, okay, we're going to prioritize this. We're all going to adjust. We're going to work together in these unprecedented times.
Flatten the curve. Yeah.
That's right. Flatten the curve, social distancing. And so now, as we're seeing different regions, even here, people are criticizing, oh, it's too fast. And they're so scared, but they're not willing to look at the consequences socially and medically and economically that are going to affect outcomes of people's mental health and physical health, which is a compassionate view. So it's not like you have to be all one side or the other. Once again, as if everything gets lost in the nuance, right? And people's true colors are coming out on this. So you're starting to see who really likes power over them for some strange reason and is totally fine with believing anything. Then you have people that are willing to make any connection or link and go completely off the rational sort of sphere of things, and suddenly everything's a weird conspiracy. And then you have very few people or quiet voices in the middle trying to balance all of that, where you can take it seriously, but you can still look at realistically, where are we going with this? Because like you said, the goal changed from not overwhelming our health system to now, okay, now what? And there's all these communities doing different things, and everybody's just, it's very messy.
Yeah, it is. And like, at one point it was, we need to make masks and everybody make masks, and now we need ventilators. So companies are retooling to make ventilators, and it just all seems like we're spinning our wheels to feel busy. But then ultimately, like you were saying, the people who suffer are, the car salesman who can't sell a car because nobody's going anywhere, the waiter or waitress who can't get a tip because nobody's going to the restaurant, all of these jobs that support quite a lot of people just can't be done right now because of the fear. But the reality is we could protect a lot of the population that's at risk and get back to work. Like I was making the point the other day, if there's a really bad flu outbreak or what's that, hand, foot, and mouth is very contagious at my son's daycare, right? If they've got a bad flu or a hand, foot, and mouth, they might shut down for a day to clean the center. But I don't even think I experienced that. Like if they shut down for a day, you're going to get every parent there being like, you're shut today? You're shut now? Today you're shut? I've got my kid here. Like,
I got to go to work.
Yeah, like what are you going to do for me because I pay you and you're shutting for the day, right? And then the whole country shut. And it's like, without question, Canadians fell in line and stepped up to the plate and did what we were asked by our governments at every level to do, right down to municipal. Stay in your homes, keep people safe, don't go to the playgrounds, for months without questioning it, really. And people who questioned it were like you were saying, their throats were jumped down. But it's not as simple as you care or you don't care, but people are trying to make it about that. And I think that it's so just wild to experience that. Like there's no nuance. There's no possible way that we could save our economy and protect people. Like
that's just it. And the other thing is I would maybe have an easier time accepting a lot of this if there was more rational thought in my mind to sort of the common sense or consistency with how it's being applied, whether by bylaw officers in the form of tickets or whether by just different protocols. It strikes me as very, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, what's an essential service? Sure, that one.
Walmart.
I don't. It's so, when you think of it logically in the risk of how you might, this virus might transfer to someone else, there's a lot of them that just don't make sense to me. And I think that's what people have struggled with is, okay, well, who's making the decision? Are they keeping certain things open for their buddies or their business or whatever? You don't know. There seems to be no consistency, and a lot of it's not based on transparency or common sense. And there's just so many TikTok videos. There's just so many. I don't have TikTok. I didn't know what TikTok was till I had nephews, but I keep seeing reports about them and people doing weird clapping things in the streets. I don't know. It's just the whole thing is bizarre and uncomfortable. I'm not going to lie, but I just wish there was more sense to it. And that if you just question a little bit, you weren't automatically deemed, you want to murder my grandmother. No, I really, really don't. So I've taken it seriously. I've done my part. I'm
but what's the goal now? It makes me miss planking. Yeah. Remember when planking was the thing we used to...
Oh, there's always a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think of 2012, people were just planking everywhere, and you're just like, what? Why are you? And then the bottles. Do you remember the bottles where people were tossing bottles at and then it would just land, and people were like they accomplished
I don't
something?
remember that one. I
Oh
must have
no!
been, not online as much in
Oh
that
my
time.
goodness, bottle tossing was a thing
You'll
that
have to send me a link.
oh my, I don't even know why I would watch people for kids, people with better things to do, sitting there trying to land a bottle on a binder on a window ledge for hours, and I would be like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And then if they did it, oh my goodness, it was like they were the king of the windowsill.
Sometimes life is rough. You gotta just
You
really
gotta
enjoy the little victories.
You gotta take your wins.
Come on,
Bottle
gotta be
flipping.
compassionate there.
Man, maybe I'm misremembering this, but I remember it being just insanity. Okay, speaking of insanity, Canada's polling is out of control. Polling about everything is crazy, and this poll just offends me. I just think that they're just making it up. 8 in 10 Canadians don't agree on anything. There's nothing. You can't even say no, there's nothing that 8 out of 10 Canadians agree on. Least of all this, but Global News is saying. A new poll conducted by Ipsos exclusively for Global News shows that 8 in 10 Canadians say they agree with the move to ban assault-style guns. And they use the assault style in quotes because assault style is not a defined term in Canada. So they're not legally defined. We have other classifications for weapons. I'm interested in, Kelly, in your take on this, because in Ontario, there's lots of gun crime, and that gun crime hasn't abated at all since the ban came in. Have you noticed an increase or a decrease in gun crime out in Saskatchewan? And what's the impact for you guys on this?
Well, full disclosure, I'm not keeping up to date with stats as much. So there's, if someone wants to pass on some links about that stuff, it's certainly, I'd be happy to read them. I'm not going to claim I'm an expert, but that's the problem. Is I feel like there's too many people that aren't experts that are making these decisions and doing these polls and even wording things in ways that are misleading. I don't think most Canadians. I didn't know what an assault rifle was until I married someone that has his pal and our pal and owns guns legally and responsibly. And I've even now, I just don't know enough. And I would hope that people that understand looks versus, classification on looks versus classification on function. There's a lot of things when you look at that list that are really, again, nonsensical. It's not consistent. And so I'm not going to argue, anything too specific, but in general, it's region by region. I live in a very high crime region. I believe we are number 6 this past year on violent crime in Canada.
Really?
We have, Prince Albert's not very big. We do have a high crime rate, and there's different reasons for that, but we do have 4 major prisons and some smaller, healing lodges and other restorative justice sort of centers. So there's a max, medium, national pen, there's a Saskatchewan pen, women's, youth. So there's a lot of transients and people that will stick around before or after. There's a lot of poverty, there's a lot of issues. So generally we have a lot of crime anyway. And I live in a not so great neighborhood. So I see of and hear of the police reports every weekend, and there's always sort of the equal amount of, there's a lot of meth abuse going on. You have a lot of homelessness and people, there's a lot of break-ins, car thefts, that kind of stuff, but definitely gangs, people that are known to each other. I would say stabbings and whatnot seem to be more common.
Really?
We see a lot of sawed-off shotguns are a big thing in that, in the community of gangs where people are kind of, you're basically having cops bust in and grab however much cocaine, however much meth, however many guns, however, that's what they're always reporting. I don't think this national regulation change is going to do anything for my area, specifically as far as the greater Saskatchewan area, maybe in the cities. I doubt it. I really don't think, from what I've seen and the patterns, I don't think it'll do anything. And it bothers me that consistently these major social issues that are, I'm in a different universe than the people in Toronto, and I have some great friends in Toronto, but we don't have the same day-to-day. We have different demographics. We have different problems with crime. We have different industry. We have different geography, climate. Everything's different. To constantly make policy based out of Ottawa and based out of major urban centers, like what's happening in Toronto, is ridiculous. We're the same size. We're smaller. We're smaller. Our whole province is smaller than Toronto. So it's just not the same. And that's what happens is in places like Alberta and Saskatchewan, we don't feel like we're even being polled. That's my first question on these polls. How are the questions worded? And also, are they calling a lot of people that are rural? Because I don't think they are. Because if you were focused on rural areas and Also, places like Saskatchewan and Alberta, those numbers would be more like 2, 3, maybe 4 out of 10, not 8.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my thoughts. It's worlds apart, and that's why I'm a small government girl, because I just don't see how you can effectively represent your people. I mean, what's the point even of MPs when it comes to stuff like this?
Yeah.
Right? The policy is going to be made
Well,
based on the biggest urban centers, and we get screwed over, and then there's this alienation feeling in Western separatism, and these are the types of things that fuel more Western separatism. So
Yeah,
that's something people need to be aware of.
Yeah, well, and I mean, it's also notable that the policies themselves don't work. You know, like even if they're crafted for urban centers, even if they're crafted to cut down on violence there, and I don't even believe that they really are. Then they're failing at that, and so that's something to consider, that it's not actually delivering the promise, right? Like the promise of fewer gun crimes per day or whatever there. And in fact, in Toronto it's increased, and you're saying like when the problem is gangs and illegal guns, doing something like this is tone deaf. And I think that that's true across the board. Like whether you're in Ontario or Saskatchewan or
that's true, and that's where we're united. And ultimately, okay, there's the argument, well, obviously if there's no guns around to steal or be trafficked, then we'd all be fine and just happy and hunky-dory. And
just the government,
let's entertain that.
Just the government get guns.
Yeah, because they're so trustworthy. And there's never been a tyrannical government in the history of the entire world. No. It's just a beautiful fairy tale, right? But even if that were true, there's a lot of other ways to kill someone and kill mass amounts of people. And I think you see that in other places that have, they ban guns. Okay, well, now it's knives, it's acid attacks, it's bombing. If someone has an intent to harm, they're going to harm. And this I don't think to me, it's more of a vote thing and a control thing. But everyone's got opinions on that. I don't believe in the good intentions of this.
No.
The way it happened too, fast and undemocratic, and I just don't feel good about it.
Yeah, well, and there's rules against using an order in council to ban a weapon that is recognized as being used for hunting, and in the same breath, they say that these weapons can be used by Indigenous or Aboriginal hunters, and it's like, well, can it be used for hunting, or is it a dangerous, murderous weapon that is only built to kill as many humans as possible, to use the quote?
Yeah, pick one, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So moving into and discussing the authoritarian police, who should be the only ones allowed guns, under this idea that the Liberals are pushing. Keean Ejected was ejected today or yesterday from, I guess it was yesterday, from the Justin Trudeau morning show. The daily, I'm going to spend your money outside of Canada presser that Justin Trudeau has every day. Keean has been on the phone for the last month, I guess, trying to get his questions answered. And so today yesterday he went to the front door of the Prime Minister's house. They let him into the first staging area, and then in the second staging area, they told him that he wasn't allowed to take photos. They demanded to look at his phone. They demanded to verify that he had not taken any photos, and then when he refused to let them look at the phone, despite the fact that that is not a crime, he was manhandled and ejected from the Prime Minister's residence area. This is in Canada. This is in 2020, and it seems, I always talk on my show about a slippery slope, and we seem to be running into situations where it doesn't matter what's legal, what's lawful. It just matters what's happening, and man, like Keean didn't do, and I think that he's probably got some kind of ability to push back. He could probably have some kind of lawsuit, but the damage is done. He can't ask the question. If he goes back again, I mean, what do you think they're going to do? I'm waiting for the video, because he's the kind of guy who's going to go back again. But this is meant to chill. Yeah, but this is meant to chill people. This is meant to make people think twice. If Keean is going to get arrested and thrown out, what are they going to do to me, right? So,
and because he's been successfully depersoned, as the media does so well with anyone that is on the wrong side of the political fence,
that they deem on the wrong side.
Yeah, exactly. Wrong. Make sure I do the quotations. Wrong side. The wrong thing types. And granted, Keean's a little bit provocative. He pushes the line, but you know what? He has rights and he knows it, and he was let in. And barring me understanding any sort of fine print on this, this seems extremely, regardless, it's unethical, and that's what's bothering me. Is it's a slippery slope, and I don't feel like it's not ethical and it's not fair, and worse, it's not consistent.
Yeah.
So let's say you don't like, Keean, again, devil's advocate, you don't like him, or you think, oh, then he's not a real journalist. Okay, well, let's say this hack journalism outfit, what, Saskatchewan Herald, is that what it's called? They keep putting out all kinds of lovely race baiting opinion nonsense pieces and call it a journalism piece. Okay, well, would you at least then say that it's okay to just throw it both sides? Because I don't see consistency on that. But B, to throw out any voices on any side, I think we should all be, I wouldn't want Rosemary Barton thrown out of anywhere, and I'm not a big fan.
Imagine this was Stephen Harper doing this to any journalist. Doesn't matter if they were rabid leftists, right? Like even up to fully blown socialists who can't explain the difference between socialism and communism. There's no difference. It's the same picture. It's the same.
Spoiler alert. But it's true. And I think what's unfortunate is that people are not realizing what this means in a bigger sense. Like you said, it's a slippery slope. And this is not something that we want to start saying, well, it's okay for you, but only because I think you're despicable or you're this or that. Now, I mean, I think that's pretty gross, because who's deciding that? Because there's people that have, called me all kind of things and smeared me in the mainstream media and said all kinds of lies. So it's who's deciding, who are we giving that power, and why would we as a people want to give someone that power? Freedom of the press is pretty darn important. And it's about integrity and ethics. And I think this is a pretty bad look. If nothing else, people can argue it on whatever side they want. But people must remember, too, that not too long ago, the courts decided in favor of Rebel News and True North when they weren't allowed to report on the leaders' debates. And so they went to court, and they were basically, the judge agreed with them, and they were able to cover it. So, I mean, it wasn't very fair. But obviously, if there's a bit of a, not maybe legal precedence, but there's a tone now that's been set. So I'm wondering if they'll go after them in that way. Rebel definitely isn't shy about taking people to court.
No, that's true. And I mean,
they got balls.
Yeah. And I mean, like, somebody needs to, there is freedom of the press is a thing for a reason. Having the ability to have questions asked that aren't vetted, or even vet the questions and help them. Not vet the questions like, you have to have pre-approved questions, but like have the questions before to get a good answer, right? Like I would rather have the questions and know that a hard question's coming, so I've got the answer ready and can have some stats, and then we've got an expectation of it, rather than like, catch them like, oh, there's been a few times where the Ontario minister didn't have the same numbers and people were asking. It's like a gotcha moment. It's like seeing somebody mess their lines up on live TV, right? Like, but I'd rather have good questions. I'd rather have substantive questions answered, or substantive answers to questions from the government than them scrambling and say, oh, well, we'll get back to you. Like I'd like a hard question posed well, and I'd like the leader to have to stand there until they can answer it. And if they can't answer it, then that's a problem, or it should be a problem for the populace. And
that's it. There's no humility, though. I mean, the person doesn't want to be wrong, and they're not going to admit that they're wrong. And no one is just willing to say, you know what, I don't have the answer, but I care, and I'm going to get back to you, or just to even have the respect to allow it to be bloody answered. I think it's pretty sad that we don't have I would want robust conversation from a leader. I think that's important. I don't know why we want other opinions squandered. I don't think that's remotely healthy as a population, because the whole free speech, free press thing protects the most vulnerable. It's not about whatever this power structure is that hate speech and all that kind of stuff. I mean, this goes really deep. But when you look at someone like Keean, because people have this image of him in their mind, they've decided that this is now okay. And that's where it's scary, because that depersoning, that's such a slippery slope, because you start to see patterns in history where this has happened, and certain groups of people have been labeled sort of deplorable, or not accepted, and maybe they're vile. They're not even really people, they're just monsters, right? So that's getting bigger and bigger, and we're seeing it now at that level. I think that's pretty frightening.
And it's not just Keean, like you were saying, the True North during the election, the grandmother from Quebec who was saying, Mr. Trudeau, the 172 million, when are we going to get 172 million back? Man, I wish it was 172 million now. But it's a pattern this government continually repeats. It's a pattern this government has doubled down on and tripled down on, and they're willing to go to court. They don't care. Like, as long as that takes, and then, sure, when the court case is won, they'll let Keean come and ask a question in the courtyard of the Prime Minister's house. But by that time, maybe Parliament will have been resumed. Or we're just celebrating the Justin Trudeau show for Christmas this year, like...
It's really just, honestly, every day I can't really watch it much more than just to have the maybe transcript, because it's the same calm demeanor. We as Canadians will stand together. Here's where the money's going today, insert place here. Let's be strong. There's no place for hatred, random buzzwords. Like, you can just pick them from a book and stick them in, and then he gives some money away, and then he goes back in his house. And I don't think it's remotely helpful. Literally, the media, there's been the odd article thrown in there to criticize or question, but it has been so rare, and it's been a disaster. The COVID stuff's been a disaster. The stuff with Tam, the stuff with Haidu, it's
it's all bad.
Ridiculous. And yet, just ignore that. But what about that bad orange man down there? Ooh, he's ridiculous. Hey, Canadians, aren't you glad you don't have him?
All those polls telling us 8 out of 10 Canadians hate Donald Trump.
8 out of 10. It's like do they just do a bingo thing where they roll that little ball and they pick the number out of 10 and then just say it was? It's
more like a writer's room than it is a news organization. They're just tossing ideas around. What did Trump do bad today?
Yeah.
All right. With that, I think we'll bring our conversation to a close. Thank you very much for coming and chatting with me today, Kelly. I hope we could do it again. Are you interested in coming back?
I would happily come back to Speaking Moistly, and we will continue to speak moistly about the Canadian interests of our topics of interest, I guess, of the day.
The crazy stuff that happens in Canada. Wonderful. Well, I will set that up, and we will have you back on. And thank you, dear viewer, for watching. And this is not the Prime Minister to play us out. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co. Check out CanadaReport.co. Kelly, do you have any websites you want to plug?
I just have the YouTube channel on a bit of a hiatus, but there's some stuff coming up. Going to be interviewing Dave Rubin, which is pretty cool. So YouTube, you can just Google Kelly Day. It's under. I should come up pretty well near the top-ish, other than the supermodel from somewhere else in the world. That's not me. And at Kelly R Day 19 is my Twitter handle. So those are the places I'm most active.
Very cool. Send me the link and I'll put it in the show description. All right. And thanks for watching. Have a wonderful day.
Speaking moistly.